I worked there for about, a number of years, 15 years before moving up here. And so I'm kind of in the tail end of my career. And, you know, um, Other than that, I have my brother lives up here too. He's a dentist. He lives here in Portland. And then my
Mm.
sister is a pediatrician and she lives in near Southern College. Her name is Kathy Chung. Her
Oh yeah.
Billy Chung
Uh-huh.
and Kathy Chung. They live over there at Collegedale, and so yeah, there's the three of us. I grew up. My father's a retired minister,
Mm.
and so he's he pastored at in Canada and then in Toronto, Canada for a while, and then came out to LA and pastored Olympic Church, Loma Linda. He retired from
Oh.
the Loma Linda Church as the pastor there, and that's when he retired. So
Oh, I see.
yeah. So other than that, I'm an emergency room physician throughout my career, and I've always been, growing up as a pastor's child, you're always involved in church in some format. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was always helping in church and involved. And then at some point in time, I was always involved with youth. So that's been really my big focus is youth ministry,
Oh,
and
great.
all throughout my career. And so that's how I got a chance to go to, Korea
Uh-huh.
and speak at the middle school there, and then eventually I spoke at the college there,
Oh.
um, and for a week of prayer,
Uh-huh.
and then so I was always involved in some fashion with youth and speaking to them, and even currently right now we have a youth pastor here, but I'm the liaison for the youth, and so I'm always involved still with the youth ministry right now.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so that's right now that's kind of my mission, and that's my ministry right now is working with the youth along with kind of doing some AV stuff at the church. So yeah,
Wow. Sounds wonderful. So you're always being with like youth spirit, right? So far.
yeah, just trying to
Right.
stay young.
Oh yeah, it was like 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, I think, but you haven't changed it at all. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
Very
because you
tempted to dye this white hair, but
okay, all right.
I don't
That's the
care.
only thing that I can notice though. Yeah.
I'm not fooling anybody.
Yeah, actually one of our members, in this group, yeah, is from Portland, Oregon.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, she's like responding. She's now in Korea, I think. Yeah, and
Okay.
she just replied, "Oh, I'm from Portland, Oregon too." So
Awesome, awesome.
yeah, awesome. And actually, my brother-in-law is working at a Olympic church right now. His pastor
Okay.
Enoch. You know Enoch
Oh,
Lee? Yeah.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
I know Pastor Enoch so well.
Yeah, because he
Uh,
used to work at as a pastor here in Loma Linda University Church, right? Korean church, I mean.
yeah, and I went with Enoch the
Mhm.
very first time I went to Korea to speak at the junior high.
Oh,
My brother-in-law Billy Chung
oh yeah,
was
yeah.
speaking for high school, and Enoch was translating for him
Wow, I
that
see.
week. And so that's how I got to meet Enoch and
Uh-huh.
really became friends. I've known him for a long time now. So yeah,
Yeah,
he's
it sounds really long time ago because my brother-in-law, worked with Billy Chung like 2 decades ago, I think. Yeah, in Tennessee, right?
yeah.
Yeah, so wow, that's good. And yeah, so thank you so much for your introduction. And now we got to know a little better about you. And so you are very mission oriented, like ER physician, and you graduated from Loma Linda University School of Medicine. So I have a question, and can you tell us because you must have a lot of as an ER physician, you must have a lot of episodes happening in the ER, right? So
Mhm.
I wanna want you to share some of the like very unforgettable episode or inspiring episodes that you want to share with us today.
I mean, there's a lot of different, I mean, you meet so many different people
Mm.
in the emergency room. I had, definitely a lot of um, situations where you do come across people. You don't, being in the ER, you don't get to form relationships with people, right? I
Mhm.
mean, because it's
Mhm.
not like primary care, or you don't, I'm not seeing people recurrently.
Mm.
Um, on occasion, I see people recurrently just because with our church, we do help with homeless ministry. This is when I was going to church down in down where my hospital is, and so I
Mhm.
would see homeless people come in that I would meet when our church was doing ministry, and so then they would come in as a patient, and I would see them on occasion from time to time, and we would know each other because of
Mhm.
kind of the work that the church was doing, with the homeless, and so. But besides that, there's not a lot of opportunities for you to form like a long
Mhm.
lasting relationship with people. Um,
Mhm.
but I think the biggest thing for me in terms of working in my practice and coming across people is how much pain and suffering there is in the world. And that's been really over the years, over the, I think, past 20, 27 years that I've been practicing. It's really been kind of like seeing how much pain there is, whether it's in the form of, addictions or whether it's in the form of psychological pain or relational pain. Um, that's really been the biggest thing. And how, looking from a worldly perspective or the earthly perspective, how, in many ways, I guess really depressing and how futile it seems because we really don't have any answers for them. These are patients that have, addictions or depression or different types of mental health problems, and we're seeing them over and over and over again recurrently. And so I'll
Mhm.
have discussions with them and I'll just say, and they'll always say the same thing. I've tried so many different medications, I've seen so many therapists, and nothing works. Um, and so eventually I get to, like you kind of probe and you say, well, what kind of support do you have? What do you lean on when
Mhm.
it really face these dark times, right? And do
Mhm.
you have like family? Do you have a church? Do you believe in, do you have a God that you can turn to? And that's kind of like my entry question to them, like to kind of probe. And invariably, a lot of times they'll say, no, I really don't have a lot of, support or people I can turn to. And those are the times where I can say, you know what, I think, I can just say personally, I can just, from a personal standpoint, there's not very many constants in this world where you can really lean on someone
Mhm.
because a lot of these people, their parents aren't even there for them, right? I mean, you can't even
Uh-huh.
bring up that aspect, right? Like, well, you can count on your parents. I mean, a lot of their parents are the ones that are causing
Mhm.
them the most pain.
Mhm.
So, I usually will talk to them about, in my mind personally, the only constant in this world, in this universe, is my belief in God. That
Mhm.
God
Mhm.
is someone who will never let you down, will never turn your back on you, will always be there for you. And and sometimes they're open to prayer, sometimes they're not. I mean, it just really, it really depends. So I think that's for me. I wouldn't say that there's like a, there's lots of stories where like there's patients that I talk with and things like this, but I think overall in general, that's been kind of like one of the things that I've taken away from my work in the emergency department.
Oh, I see. I see. Wow, thank you so much for sharing your
Yeah, no,
yeah.
and a lot of times if you just, I think a lot of times when you sit down and you spend enough time with them and you talk to them,
Mhm.
you know, even though in the ER we're so busy, it's hard to sit down and talk for
That's
just
so true.
a while.
Uh-huh.
Just a little bit that you end up talking to them, and if you're able to pray with them, many of
Mhm.
these patients, they'll just say, you know what, I feel a lot better. I think I could go home now.
Without
And
any
like,
intrusion.
these are patients that I
Yeah.
probably would have ordered a CAT scan on or, drawn labs and, and given medicine for pain. But there have been a number of times where they've just said, you know what, I feel a lot better. I think
Wow, that's
I think I
amazing.
can go home.
Mhm.
And you realize that, you know what? I mean, they're really there because one, they have a lot of, they
Mhm.
have a lot of emotional pain, right? And that emotional pain is being translated to their physical body. And so it's just, yeah, it's overall, I think it's just a reflection of the pain that and suffering that this world is experiencing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I agree with the fact that, you are not only just, trying to treating their current symptoms, but also you are just deeply like engaged in their spiritual work. You touch their hearts, right? So that they could feel like alleviation from their pain. So that's really amazing. Yeah, thank you. So actually, I just dive into the very deep questions beforehand, but for the sake of the Ellen, because it's now being recorded and they're gonna listen to the session. So what brought you to be a physician, and what inspired you to become yeah, go to medical school and went through all like specialties. It's very difficult journey to be a physician and attending, I mean, residency and attending an ER physician right now. So what inspires you? Was there any mentors, or was there any like kind of like calling, higher calling you felt when you were younger?
Um, I mean, to be very honest with you, I would say I don't know if I felt called by God to be a physician.
Mhm.
Um, when I was in college, I started out as pre-med, and I remember becoming very interested in the stock market and in business. And
Nice.
there was a movie a long time ago called Wall Street that I watched. This is
Uh-huh.
back when I was, like a freshman, sophomore in college, and I was like really heavily influenced by that. And I thought, oh man, I want to go into business. And actually, to tell you the truth, I was a business pre-med. I started out a business
Oh, I
major,
see.
my
Uh-huh.
my major, and to go into med school, you just need those four core classes,
Yeah, that's true.
biology
Correct.
and general chemistry, organic, and physics. And
Uh-huh.
so my initial plan was to do business pre-med and go to medical school.
Mhm.
But then when I just started thinking about it, I thought, I don't want to do what everyone else is doing, and let me just be a stockbroker. And so then I kind of gave up the idea of going into med school, and I just started doing business. And I actually did a internship at Merrill Lynch,
Mhm.
which was a big investment firm,
Mhm.
and my plan was to work for Merrill Lynch as a stockbroker. And so then when I hit my junior year of college, my mom, she said to me, she says, you know what, you already took those four classes already.
Uh-huh.
I know you
Uh-huh.
don't want to go to medical school, but can you just please take the MCAT? And I was like,
Uh-huh.
why should I take the MCAT? I have no intent of being a physician. I don't want to go into med school. And she goes, in the end, she just said, can you just please do it for me? And so
Wow.
I was like, okay, all right, I'll just do it for you. And so I
Uh-huh.
studied and I took the MCAT, and I didn't do great, but I did well enough.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
then I said, okay, I did it for you. And so then I came to my senior year of college, and I graduated. And what I wanted to do was I was going to take a year off, and I
Mhm.
wanted to do two things. I wanted to go to Korea and learn Korean. So
Uh-huh.
I enrolled at Yonsei University, their
Oh, okay.
at and to learn Korean, because I
Uh-huh.
really kind of wanted to learn Korean. And I figured if I went into business, if I knew how to speak Korean, that would be great. If I went to medicine and I could speak overall, it would be a plus
Mhm.
plus. So I said, okay, I'm going to go to Korea and I'll learn Korean. And then I wanted to backpack around Southeast Asia.
Mhm.
So I enrolled at Yonsei University, and before I left, my mother said, uh, before you leave, can you just please turn in an application form to Loma, right, med school? And
Uh-huh.
I was like, why would I turn in an application?
Uh-huh.
And she goes, oh, please, you never know what's going to happen. Just turn one in for me, and
Wise mom.
just do it for me. I know, mom. She pulled
Yeah.
out the mom card, and so then I was like, oh, okay, all right, sure. So I remember that day. It was like, I think 1 or 2 days before I was going to fly out. And I was in jeans and a t-shirt. And I went to Loma Linda, and I went to the medical school, the dean's office,
Mhm.
and I turned in my application. I said, I just like to turn in an application for medical school. And so the secretary there was like, oh, great, okay, and stuff. And then she said,
Mhm.
we'll call you when, for an interview. If you
Mhm.
get an interview, we'll give you a call. And I told her that might be a little difficult because I'm actually leaving the country for a year.
Mhm.
And so I don't know if I'm going to be able to do an interview. And she was like, oh, yeah, that might be a little hard. And so she said, well, you know what? The dean is in his office right now. Why don't you just go interview right now? Right. And so then I was like, okay. And so then I went in the office and we sat down and we just talked a little bit, and then I left. And I left for Korea, and back then it was before there was no internet back then.
Oh, no, no, no. Yeah.
Long time ago. I
In
mean,
those
there's no
days.
internet as I remember it.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
it was just writing letters
Uh-huh.
and phone calls. And so I remember in December, somewhere around December-ish, my mom, we were talking on the phone, and she goes, "Oh, by the way, you got your acceptance letter to Loma Linda." And so then I was like, "Okay, whatever." I mean, I was like, no, I didn't really want to go.
Uh-huh.
So then I was like, okay. Then as I got closer and closer to coming back home,
Mm-hmm.
um, I was thinking about, you know, being a stockbroker. And I don't know if any of you know about what it's like being a broker, but when I interned at Merrill Lynch,
Mm-hmm.
first 3 years of being a broker, you have to spend those 3 years going through reams and reams of phone
Mm-hmm.
numbers and names, lots of papers of people's names. And you
Uh-huh.
have to call them and say, "Hi, Ken Pack here at Merrill Lynch here on Lake Boulevard. I just
Uh-huh.
want to tell you about this amazing opportunity in this small company called Apple Computers. I think it's going to be a great company. I think you should invest in it."
Oh, uh-huh.
And so you're basically begging people to
Uh-huh.
buy stock, right?
Yeah, yeah, that is right.
And become
Uh-huh.
a client. That's what you're doing.
Uh-huh.
And you'll probably make hundreds of phone calls a day, and you'll maybe get 10 people that might listen to you, and maybe one person might
Mhm.
become your client, right? And so for
Yeah.
your first 3 years as a broker, you're just calling people, begging.
Wow.
It's a really, really tough job, right? So you're just
It
basically
is.
begging
Uh-huh.
all day long. So I thought to myself, okay, do I want to, for 3 years, it's called cold calling. Do I want to cold
Oh,
call
calling.
for 3 years, or
Uh-huh.
do I want to study really hard in the first 2 years of med school, right? What should I do, right?
Uh-huh.
And I thought, you know what? Um, if I go to med school and I don't like it, I could always I could always
And
fall
just
back.
drop out of, oh, yeah,
I
yeah,
could always fall
yeah.
back and always be a broker. That's not
Uh-huh.
hard. But I think it
Uh-huh.
would be hard to be a broker and then go to med school, right?
Mm,
I think that would be harder.
mm,
And so that's why I decided, you know what? Let me just go to med school. Let me just try it, see what it's like,
uh-huh.
and see if I can, see if it's for me. And so that's how I ended up in med school. I honestly didn't feel this warm,
Oh,
burning
yeah, like kind of you.
spiritual desire in my heart, to be
Uh-huh.
honest.
Uh-huh.
But it was just one of those. I'm sure my mom was praying, and I think it was
Mhm.
just her prayers and her, her I don't know, her desire, that I ended up there. And I mean, no joke, it was hard. It was definitely
Mhm.
hard, right?
Mhm.
It's hard when you don't have that strong conviction, right? And
Yeah,
so I
right.
studied really
Mhm.
hard. I did
Mhm.
study very hard, and by the grace of God, I was able to pass, and
Mhm.
and eventually, get my diploma and become a physician. But that's my story in terms of getting to med school and getting through.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
It doesn't sit very well when I talk to pre-med students right now about how I got there. They're like, "Oh, I hate you."
There's
You know?
totally different perspective, but I think it's really good to like take it in though.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, there's so many different kinds of people, and wow, but that's kind of huge like transition from what you had longed to be or do, and then I think your mother, 사모님's prayer is way like more powerful than
oh
your
yeah,
desire, right?
yeah. It's no joke,
Uh,
man. You
uh,
can't fight that.
Oh, yeah, you can't get away from that though, right? You can
I
walk
know.
away from. So I want to ask you, so didn't you regret, the journey of medicine is kind of really tough, right? You have like burnout syndrome, or there's yeah, I mean, what is that? Like uh imposter syndrome, all
Yeah.
those kind of syndrome without like strong desire that I want to do this, I want to be a physician. How
Yeah.
did you get over those kind of things when you
So
hit down the road?
here's my perspective on medicine, and just being a doctor. And this is, this may speak to some of the high school students there.
Mhm,
It's a job. I mean, you have to have a job, and you
mhm,
have to work. And if you have a job that you are passionate about, you're very lucky. If you are very passionate about what you do,
mhm,
whether it's if you're a baker or you're a pastor or a
Mhm.
teacher,
You're
you're a
right.
nurse, or a YouTube influencer,
Mhm.
and that's your passion, you should consider yourself very, very fortunate and very lucky because I don't think that's very common, right? That
Mhm.
you can find a profession that you're so passionate about. Um, and at the end of the day, it's an occupation, right? And that's your job. And like any job, it's gonna be difficult and it's gonna be hard. But you know what? That's life. Life is hard. And you just have to suck it up and you work.
Mhm.
But like I said, if you're passionate about it, like right now, my wife is passionate about dentistry. She loves dentistry. We go
Mhm.
on a family vacation and she can't wait to get back to work, go
Really?
work as a dentist. And I look at her and I go, you are really 이상해, right? You're a real strange person, right? What is wrong with you, right? And
Uh-huh,
the
uh-huh.
weekend, she can't wait for the weekend to be over so she can go back to work because she loves dentistry. Now, part of that may be because, I mean, she battled cancer and cancer really gave her a new perspective, right?
Oh, okay.
And so she is very like she loves life, right? I mean,
Oh,
she
yes.
understands, and so that definitely helps her in terms of knowing, right, what
Mhm.
the things that she's grateful for.
Mhm.
So that, yeah, definitely helped her. But at the same time, she's found a profession that she really is passionate about. And if you can find that, and that's what your heart is telling you that your passion is going to be medicine, definitely, yeah, I would say
Mhm.
more power to you. But I
Mhm.
think for some of the high school students and some of the college students that are out there, you know what? It's okay if you're not passionate about it, but you know what? You have to understand the cost, right?
Ah,
And
yes.
right, you
Mhm.
have to understand the cost, both financially, emotionally, time wise.
Mm.
You took the amount of money that you put into med school and you invested it or you put it
Uh-huh.
into some other business, you'd probably be pretty successful, right?
Mhm.
And so yeah, there are other avenues for you to succeed.
Mm.
Uh, but in the end, I think, yeah, if you want to be a doctor, you don't have to feel this strong calling necessarily. I
Mm.
think you
Mm.
can look at it
I
and
agree.
say, this is a great occupation. It's very stable. I think
Mhm.
I think I'm going to do it, right? And
Mm.
I think some of the advice that I give to the high school students at our church and the college students at our church is, if if you're not sure, then make sure when you go to college that you take a major that when you finish, you can work,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
Um, don't take a major where you do 4 years of, I don't know, let's just say biology.
Mhm.
I don't know if you can work if you don't go to medicine, right?
Mhm.
You're going to have to
You'll
pursue
see.
something else on top of
Uh-huh.
that.
Uh-huh.
So I just had this discussion with one of the high school students at our church last night, and I was telling her because she's kind of deciding between nursing and pre-med.
Oh, uh-huh.
And I said, you know what? You should do nursing pre-med. That was my advice to her. I
Mhm.
said, it's a little harder, but I think you can do it. You just take the 4 core classes and just declare yourself as nursing and
Mhm.
just go become an AS in nursing. And in your 3 years of, college, you can sit down and take your nursing test,
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
you can be a nurse. And then take your pre-med requirements. And at the end of the 4 years, if you decide, you know what, I don't think I want to be a doctor, at least you have a job. At
Mhm.
least you can work as a nurse and then become a nurse practitioner or nurse anesthetist, or you have a lot of flexibility
That is so
instead of
true.
going into
Uh-huh.
biology and pre-med.
Yeah.
So like my son is kind of thinking about medicine. I told him, I think because Southern, he's thinking about maybe going to
Uh-huh.
Southern. I said, maybe you should go into, they have a general contracting
Mhm.
degree there. And my recommendation was go be a general contractor and study that and then take your pre-med requirements. So if you
Mhm.
finish, at least you can be a general contractor, right? And you
Mhm.
can work
Mhm.
and make, decent money, and still, provide for your family if you decide not to do medicine. But I think the practicality of choosing a major where you actually have flexibility to work after you finish college, I think in my mind is quite important.
Oh yeah, I can. agree more, Dr. Pack, because because they, the teenagers, because of lack of like experience or exposure to the world out there, they have very narrow mindset, like, oh, I should do this, or so. But if they have like broader mindset, okay, so this is practicality wise. So I think really wise advice for them to take it in for sure. Yeah. Yeah. One more question from me, and then I want somebody must have some kind of questions to ask you. But my another question is, it's a little deeper question.
Mhm.
So um, as a medical student perspective, so there's, I before I came into medical school, I feel like, oh, so I just want to be a physician. But when I came here and studying medicine, there's so many specialties and subspecialties out there. And it's really hard to choose, oh, this is it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you have like kind of gut feeling to do, oh, ER is it's mine. Yeah.
I think you can kind of narrow it down based, for me, I could narrow it down based on the fact that, things that you don't really like. I really didn't like a lot of clinic work, to be honest. So, where you have to wear a tie and you have to wear a white coat and
Mm,
then you have to dress up a little bit and sit in the office and, see patients a lot.
mm,
I didn't like that per se. And so
mhm,
I knew that I wanted to spend as little time in clinic as possible. And so
mhm,
that just kind of ruled out some professions, some of the specialties. My mom always wanted me to go into orthopedics.
mm,
And so I thought about doing orthopedics for a while, but it would have taken me a longer road because I don't think I had the grades to go into ortho at that time. I think if I had done an extra year, like if I waited an extra year, I
yeah.
might have been able to match somewhere
Mhm, mhm,
afterwards.
mhm.
And so I thought about that. And so the only other specialty that I really enjoyed was ER, to be honest, because every
Oh,
time I did a
okay.
rotation in ER, it just
Uh-huh.
seemed like it was so alive and there was lots of energy and
Dynamic.
people, yeah, it was people were awake.
Uh-huh.
When you're on call as a med student, you go to internal medicine and things are the lights are down and
And
it's
rounding on and
quiet
on.
and
Like,
right.
uh-huh.
And so for me, I think back then it was like, oh, okay, maybe surgery or ER. I wasn't quite sure. And so in the end, I just kind of gravitated what seemed like what kind of attracted me more, and that was ER. And so
Mm.
that's kind of why I chose emergency medicine.
Oh, I see. I see.
Back then there weren't a lot of like, mentors or people that I knew that went into ER. I think there was only one person that I knew that went into ER, Tom Pye, and but other than that, I didn't really know a lot of people that went into emergency medicine. But
Oh, I see. So you literally start from the scratch, right? Without knowing any like kind of connection. And
yeah,
so you
yeah,
have kind of feeling that, oh, I really enjoy it. I can enjoy this as
yeah.
my.
I think it kind of spoke to me more. And
Mm, mhm.
now that I look back at it, it kind of suits me. I kind of like. I mean, there's some pros and cons, but I think it really suits my lifestyle
Mhm.
and kind of what I like to do. So yeah, it's
Good. That's good.
been a good fit.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if there's anybody who have like, yeah, you can ask any open-end questions to Dr. Pack if you are willing. I wish the Ellen could, join this group like
Uh,
virtually because yeah, without any technical problem.
no
But
problem.
anyhow, anybody who wants to dare to ask question. Oh yeah, Kyungjin
Hi,
from
Dr.
Korea.
Jeannie. Yeah, I just got here to South Korea yesterday night, but I live in Portland, Oregon, and it's a really beautiful city. I really enjoy there in summertime, and then I went there for cherry blossom. Like I think they's gone right now, but yeah. Anyways,
Uh,
my question is, what is your biggest challenges in your practice, and how did you overcome? It could be like environment or relationship with your coworker or something like that. Because I'm just wondering.
Yeah, that's a great question. Biggest challenges. I think the biggest challenge. Okay, so in my practice, in emergency medicine, I would say the biggest challenge for like I'll talk generally and then just myself.
Mhm.
A couple of the biggest things that is difficult for people is shift work, right? So changing from morning to afternoon shift, going to night shift and back, and this constant
Mhm.
change in your day is very, very difficult for people. Some people. For me, it hasn't been a challenge. That part I don't mind at all. I'm
Mhm.
kind of a night owl, and I can function at any time of the day or night.
Wow.
And so that hasn't been difficult. Another thing that is difficult for some people in emergency medicine is the fact that um, you're kind of jack of all trades, master of none. I don't know if you've heard of that term. Jack of all trades is you kind of know a little bit about everything, but you're not the specialist in one area, right? You're not the go-to person. You're not the orthopedic surgeon. And
Mhm.
so some people have difficulty with that. They want to know everything about that one subject, right? And so emergency medicine, the way it is, you're not like that. You kind of know everything about everything, but a little bit. I mean, just a little bit about everything. And so some people really don't like that. I haven't had too much problems with that, to be honest. And so I think one of the biggest things for me that's been difficult, just from a work perspective, is just kind of the growing trend of treating patients that really aren't emergencies per se, right? A lot of the homeless, a lot of the mental health, a lot of the drugs and alcohol, a lot of those patients. And nowadays, a lot of geriatric patients that don't have help at home.
Mhm.
I've noticed this trend even since COVID, especially after COVID, it's been really, really bad.
Mhm.
Where patients that are like 70, 80 years old, they don't have anybody to help them at home. And part of it is, 10, 20 years ago, these patients would come into the emergency room for whatever reason, like they might have some gastroenteritis or some diarrhea or vomiting or maybe some viral symptoms, and they're okay, but they're weak and they need more help at home, and maybe
Mhm.
they can't quite walk as well, and but their family is not able to help them, and their family is not able to care for them. Whether it's because financially both of the mother or father or the daughter or son, whoever it is, they're both working, whereas before financially one wasn't working and could care for that grandparent or something. Now that maybe both of those the family members are working or nobody is able to care for them, some of them just have the expectation that the hospital is going to do it, and that is growing more and more as time goes by.
Mhm.
Their expectation is that, well, this is not my problem. This is the hospital's problem. This is the health community's problem to care for my mom or my dad or my grandparent, right? And so
Mhm.
that has become a big issue in terms of not just in the emergency room, but in healthcare, because these patients are getting admitted to the hospital and they're not able to get home. And they're having to be placed into a nursing facility or an assisted living facility. And all of those are filling up. And so the hospitals are filling up and you're having extended stays. So that type of dynamic of me trying to find a way to get this patient home has been somewhat mentally, taxing
Yeah.
on myself and the
Mhm.
whole health community. So I know it doesn't sound like a big problem, but it's become a pretty big issue in the health field. But I think that's been some of the biggest challenges right now for us. But I think it just depends on your personality. I'm a pretty laid back person. You can see I have my Hawaiian shirt on. I'm pretty laid back. A whole lot of things don't necessarily bother me so much. So um, overall, I think that's probably been the biggest challenge in the past few years.
Mhm. Yeah,
Thanks
thank
so
you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
How do you incorporate, your skill set as an emergency room physician kind of when it comes to your kind of a church ministry, do you do health lectures or do you go to like, mission trips? I think I can imagine maybe at mission trips you can use a lot of your knowledge and skills and things like that.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I can speak a little bit about this. I've been on a number of mission trips before, and definitely emergency medicine is helpful in the mission field. But I will say I went to North Korea once on a mission trip.
Wow.
This is about maybe 10 years ago, and I went with a group that's based here in Seattle, and this group has built a hospital in North Korea, and they have the only other CT scanner in that hospital in the entire country besides Pyongyang. There's no other CAT scan, right? Besides, this hospital up in Rajin and then the other one in Pyongyang. But and so I went with an eye group. I don't know if any of you know like Charlie An, he's an ophthalmologist out in the East Coast in Chicago, and then Paul Chung, who is out here. He's an ophthalmologist out in Washington. But I went with them and a couple other people, and we went to do more cataract surgeries. And I went prepared to maybe give some lectures in ER. And I'll tell you, the entire trip I spent over there, I was holding an IV pole, right? And basically, it's this fluid. It's a fluid that goes into the eye that hydrates the eye as they're doing surgery. And so they would just say, higher. I would lift the pole higher. All right, that's okay. And then I'd lower it down. And then, all right, higher. And I'd like, and so the whole week I spent pretty much doing, I mean, anyone could do this, right? I mean, you could be a high school student and go on a mission trip and hold the pole higher. But it was still very rewarding. It was one of my favorite mission trips. I didn't do anything that was related to medicine at all from my skill set, and I never really did much treatment of anybody. I just held this IV pole and was smiling and nice and and help patients move from room to room and stuff. And so a lot of times when some of the other doctors at our church, they say, I have they do pain medicine, or maybe somebody's doing like radiology, and they go, I can't be used in the mission field. I just give them this example. I said, you can do anything and be used by God in the mission field or on mission trips, and so yeah, I don't think it's you don't have to have some special skill set, but in speaking about this, I remember I was when I was about to move to Portland back in 2008, I really wanted to go to the mission field and work as kind of as a missionary physician. And I prayed a lot about it, and I went to some conferences and things like this. And I remember writing a letter or emailing ADRA to ask them if there are any mission opportunities. And I at Loma Linda, I kind of emailed Loma Linda as well. They're kind of their department that deals with missions. And I asked them, I said, I'd love to go to the mission field. I'm an ER physician. My wife is a dentist, and we would love to go to the mission field to work as missionaries. And they said, we don't have any opportunities that are open for you.
Oh.
At that time, I couldn't understand why. And then when I was moving to Portland, I called up Portland Adventist Hospital, and I called up there and I asked, I said, I really want to work at an Adventist hospital. I really have this spirit of, serving in an Adventist hospital. And they said, you know what? We're not hiring Adventists right now. And I was like, what? And they said, well, because the ER contract was not contracted by the Adventist hospital. It was a separate contract. And apparently, a year before that, an Adventist ER doctor had gone and said, he said the same thing. And then he got the job, and then he worked there for about 3 months, and then he found a better job and he left. And so they said, you know what, we're really shy of, we're very kind of concerned about hiring an Adventist physician because of what happened to us. And so I just felt like there was these big roadblocks for me in terms of like pursuing this. And in the end, I came to understand that, you know, well, this is my, you know, I felt like God was just telling me, you know what, I got this. Don't worry about it. You know, you don't have to be a missionary at this time. I have other things planned for you, and it's okay. This is not, I'm not calling you to be a missionary. And it took me a while to like understand that and be comfortable with it, but I realized that, you know, it's okay. I think what God is really calling us to do is just be faithful, and just to be faithful in whatever He puts in front of you. And that might be in Zimbabwe or North Korea, or it might be in Portland, Oregon, or it might be in Dayton, Ohio, or it might be in, you know, Loma Linda, wherever it is. I think God just calls us to be faithful in whatever He puts in front of us, and He can work with that, right? So, you know, I'll share with you this story and this example. You know, we for a while we were attending the local American church here in, you know, we live currently in Portland, but I was living in Salem, which is an hour south of Portland, and that's where my hospital is. And I was going to a small American church there. And I remember when we first attended the church, we would drive up into the parking lot, and there was these 4 men who were smoking in the church parking lot, right? As I was getting to church every week, they were there, you know, smoking. And when the service ended, they would come out and they would smoke again, right, after the service ended. And I remember telling my wife, I said, you know, who is the pastor of this church who lets these guys smoke on church property, right? I was like, what is going on, right? I was like, it was just like, you don't see that very often, right? And so eventually, as we became, you know, like regular members there, I got to know the pastor. His name was Dale. And I said, Dale, what's the story with these guys that are smoking? And he said, you know, Ken, if you knew them and you know their story, you would understand. And that's all he said, right? He said you would understand. And so I got to start meeting some of these guys. One guy is Demetrio. Demetrio is a gentleman who was kind of like half homeless, and he was on the street, and he was selling flowers on the street corner when the pastor came out of McDonald's, and he was with one of the church elders, and they were standing on the corner and they're praying, and they prayed that God would help them be, you know, somehow lead people to their church, right? And as they're praying, Demetrio was on the other corner of that intersection. He saw them praying, and he ran over there, and he told them, he says, you know what, guys, I saw you praying over here, and I felt this energy from you, like this just strong, positive energy from you. And he said, I just wanted to come over and tell you this, right? And so like Dale, he was like, oh my goodness, we just prayed this prayer that God would lead people to our church, and here comes Demetrio, right? And so they said, Demetrio, why don't you come to our church, right? And so he was like, okay. And he started attending that church, you know, and so he was one of those guys that was smoking in the front. The other gentleman is a guy named Don, and Don in Vietnam was a sharpshooter. And Don, after coming back from Vietnam, was haunted by every person that he killed. He said he could, through the scope, he could remember every person that he killed. And he was traumatized by that. And, you know, to deal with that trauma and the PTSD, he turned to drugs and alcohol. And, you know, eventually, you know, Dale met him under a bridge in town, and he brought him to church. And Don started attending the church. And Don was one of those guys who was smoking in front. A third gentleman that was smoking in front was a man named Charles. And when I started coming to church there, Charles would play in the praise team, and Charles would wear a purple robe that went from his head to his toe, right? A purple robe, like a satin robe, and he had a hood like this. You know, those hoods almost look like this, like druid or some like, and he had this gold chain around his neck like this, and he would walk up there with the praise team, and he would like play drums. He was a great drummer, and I was like thinking to myself, this is really weird. Like, who is this person, right? Who dresses like this at church? And he would go up and play drums and stuff, and he'd just be like, yeah. But Charles was one of those guys that was smoking in front. And Charles, Dale, the pastor, would go to this apartment complex and to give Bible studies to somebody else. And every time he would go to give Bible study to this person, Charles would be in the front yard smoking marijuana, smoking pot. And one day he invited Charles. He says, Charles, I'm having a Bible study with this person. You want to join us? And so Charles would join him. And pretty soon, Dale would give Charles Bible studies at his apartment. But when he would give Bible studies, his whole room was filled with like marijuana smoke. And he would have all these like idols, right, on his mantle of all these like little idol things. And he would give him Bible studies. And one day, Charles took all of those idols and all of those little like his shrine, and he told Dale, I'm going to burn all of these, right? And he burned all of those, and he started coming to church, right, on a regular basis. And Charles was one of those guys smoking. And so as I got to meet every one of these guys, I was like, okay, all right, I understand, right? I understand.
Why not?
I'm like, okay, it's like smoking is the least of their problems, right? And I was like, plus they're getting to church before I am, right? They're there before I am, right? They're smoking in the parking lot, but they're at church before I am. But they're still there. And so then I asked, I asked Dale, I said, I was thinking to myself, right, what can I do to help these guys, right? And this is speaking to your question, Mr. Kim, about what can I do with my skill set? And so I was thinking about that. I was thinking, okay, what can I do? What can I do to help these guys? And I thought, you know what? Why don't I do a stop smoking clinic? All right, a stop smoking plan for them. And so I went to Dale and I said, hey, Dale, what do you think? I'm a doctor. What are your thoughts about me doing a stop smoking, clinic for them, right, at our church? And he was like, he wasn't like overly excited about like, oh yeah, that's great. You should do this, right? He was just like, yeah, that's a good idea, right? Not, okay. And I was like, that's kind of a weird response. Like usually when you go to a pastor and you offer this, they're like super excited, right? They're like, but I will tell you, Dale is different. He is a pastor that I've never met before. I've never met any other pastor like this pastor, Dale. But he said, yeah, that's a good idea. Okay. And I thought about it more, and for something just like kind of held me back. Like I never like really like thought, okay, let me do this. And I never really like, like started planning it, because I just didn't feel like something was just like wrong or off or something. I don't know what it was. And I just thought about it more and more. I talked to him more about it, and he was just like, yeah, okay, yeah. And then one day, they weren't there anymore. I mean, they were still coming to church, but they weren't smoking. And I was like, this is really weird. And so then I'd have breakfast with Demetrio, and we'd have breakfast, and we'd be, eating breakfast together. And I'd say, Demetrio, how come you guys aren't smoking out front anymore? And he said, Ken, I don't know, but God took the desire away from me like that.
Praise
Like
God.
just instantaneously, right? Says God took that desire away from me, right? And I was like, wow, that's weird. And so then I met with Don, and we were at Don's house, we were painting his house. I said, Don, how come you're not smoking anymore? How come you guys don't smoke out front anymore? And he said the same thing. He said,
Wow.
God took that desire away from me instantaneously, right? And Charles, same thing. Every single one of them, right? They were like, you know what? I don't know what it is, but I have no desire to smoke anymore, right? And I was like,
Blow your mind.
mind blown, right? Because I realized, right? I realized, you know what? God was telling me two things. I got this, right? I got this. Don't worry about, I got this. I know what's going on, right? Don't worry about it. And like, I know you're a doctor. I don't need you, right? Plus, I know if you started this stop smoking clinic, I know the pride in your heart, and I know that you would be like, good thing. Oh, good thing I did that, right? Good thing I did. Good thing I'm a doctor and I'm like working for God, and I did all this good, And I think God, He knows me. He knows my heart. He knows my temptations, and I think He realized, you know what? That's okay, Ken. That's all right. Not this time. Maybe something else, right? But not this, right? So yeah, that was like, it was a huge lesson for me. And so you know what? I don't stress out about that stuff anymore, right? I don't stress out about like, I gotta be a missionary, or I gotta do missions, or I gotta do this. I think I just have to be faithful. I have to be rooted and just like connected with God every day, and just relax and just have fun and just enjoy life and just live the life that God puts in front of me, right? And I think that's missions. I think that's missionary work. You live the best life that God gave you, and you just focus on really being faithful to God and being connected with Him. I think you're a missionary, right? Wherever you're at. And so that's my mission story. It's not like crazy. Like I didn't go to like some faraway country, but you know what? I think it's okay.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pak. As I listened to your whole story and the story of four, guys that God, intervened in this kind of mission. Because as a Christian, and I'm kind of obsessed. Oh, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that for the sake of God. But as I listen to your story, yeah, I kind of relax right now. So thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, it's very inspiring. At this moment, Hejin, can you continue on? We don't have a time limit though, right? For this?
예, 이게 교회 거라서요.
네,
교회에서
네.
빌려주신 거라서 네, 괜찮아요.
아.
타이밍은 됐어요.
오케이.
저 질문 하나 해도 될까요?
네.
영어로 번역 좀 해주세요.
네. 아이고.
이제 보면은 배우자가 있는 경우에 배우자의 소망하고 내 소망이 일치하지 않을 때가 있겠잖아요.
네.
예를 들면은 이제 경제적으로 좀 힘든, 그러니까 이제 의사가 꼭 아니더라도 다른 직업들도 이렇게 선교사로 가고 싶은 마음이 있어도 솔직히 현실적인 문제가 좀 걸리잖아요.
네.
배우자는 그래도 경제적으로 좀 어느 정도 안정이 된 다음에 좀 이렇게 노후 대책도 해놓고 가고 그 다음에 가자 뭐 이렇게 말을 할 수도 있고 이런 것들이 있을 때 그러니까 나의 그 소망하고 배우자의 소망을 어떻게 조율을 하는지 그거에 대해서 그런 고민을 하고 있는 커플이 있다면 어떤 조언을 해주실지 질문 좀.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Yeah, Dr. Park, we have a really good question. So there are cases between this, couple, like, for example, me, I want to go to a mission trip. I want to be a missionary and I want to go to mission field, like long-term missionary, right? And what if my wife feels like, thought about like, yeah, that's a really good idea, but because we are not stabilized right now, economically, financially, and if we go there, there should be some worry, right, from my spouse. So if that's the case, if there's any conflict between the couples, thinking about, one who really desire to go to missionary work,
Mhm.
one, yeah, we can do it later after we settle down here a little bit, or when you retire, we can go, because we don't have, we're not supposed, we are not responsible for like education anymore for our kids or something like that, right? So in such case, if that's the case, how is there any advice that you can give us to, if or if it were you, so how would you?
I would say if it was me, I would choose my family, right? I mean, I think that your mission field right now would be your family and relationship with your spouse, right? I mean, I think it's very difficult for you to go as a divided family to the mission field, right? That's and so I think if God is truly calling you to the mission field, I think that God will call both of you, right? God will
Okay.
put it on the hearts of both of you to go. And when that happens, I think I think it's confirmation that that's truly what God's desire is, right? I don't think God would call you and not call your wife or your husband. I think God would put that calling upon both of you, right? Because really, I mean, if you are one, you know, and married, basically you're unified as a family, and he's gonna call both of you, right? So that's me. I mean, I personally wouldn't go to the mission field. I don't think the mission field needs you, you know, right? Like I said, right? That God can do it. God can handle it, right? He's good at it. He's good at what he does. And so it's not that you are going over there to, you know, do something miraculous that only you can do. But I think that you're probably more called to serve your family at that point. And I think that's your mission field too. You know, my children are, you know, that my children are my mission field, you know, and so I think that, you know, honestly, I think that would be my answer.
I see. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
I personally wouldn't overthink it. Honestly, I wouldn't overthink things like that. I would just keep it very simple and just go, yeah, my wife is, or my husband's not happy about this. And he says, oh, okay. All right. I guess we're not going.
Step away.
End of story, right? It's like, okay, all right, let's find something else to do.
It sounds like your wife is like both. Then you follow her like order or something.
Yeah, you know, I mean, you want peace in the household, right? So you have to. I mean, I may be simplifying something that is super important for many people. They feel very called to be a missionary. But I feel very strongly that God would call both of you. Yeah, I do.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for that. And oh, now I noticed that, you know, Ellen, the youth group, just joined us, and I can see their face. So if you have, yeah, say hi to Dr. Pat and their couple up there. Do you guys have any like prompt question that you would like to ask to Dr. Pak? Anything? You ready? Dr. Pak, any question?
Of course.
Hello, doctor. You told us that your wife is a dentist, right?
Yes.
Does she love her profession? How much does she like?
She
And how-
loves it.
She loves it. Yeah, I'm also taking dentistry, and I'm also promoting to people to take dentistry because I love it too. So, if you have answer, what would you take, dentistry or medicine?
If I had to do it over again, you're asking what would I do? I would do medicine. I'm a little biased, to be honest, but it's cheaper. It's
Biased.
cheaper.
Cheaper. Cheaper.
I think it's cheaper, and then it's also I think it's just kind of what you're called, you know, what you feel like your talents, you know, are, you know, lie. I think if you want to do If you're more business minded, maybe go to dentistry, right?
Uh,
Because there are very few medical doctors that have a solo business practice that are just like running their own office and running it like like a business. Whereas with dentists, a lot of dentists will have their own practice and run it like a business. And so you can definitely do that. But as a dentist, that if you own your own practice, like my brother's a dentist, my wife's a dentist, a lot of our friends here are dentists. The ones that own their own practice and run it like a business, you have to understand as a businessman, you are never on vacation. When you do take a vacation, you're thinking about your business, right? Because you're not at your business, but your business is still there. And every time you're not there, your business is not making money. Unless, of course, you hire associates and you have a thriving practice. And so there is that level of stress that is involved in being a dentist who owns a practice. There's always that constant like level of stress there. So you have to think about that. But if that's what you like there are some like the gentleman who my wife works for, he's one of our church members, Kevin Shim. He's an amazing businessman. He runs an amazing dental office. And he does a really good job and he's good at it. And so, yeah, if that's where your strength and talents lie, I would say, yeah, maybe go into dentistry.
Thank you, Doctor. And one of the students has a question. Yeah, what was the most difficult subjects while you are studying?
In at what level?
University, college?
The hardest class I ever took in college was accounting, second level of accounting. I think it was accounting 201 or 102. I forget which one. It's not the intro to accounting. Intro to accounting is super fun. It's like very interesting, basic kind of balance sheet, but accounting, the next level of accounting, probably the hardest class I ever took. Very, very difficult. But yeah, after that, I'm not sure. I think one of the biology classes in college was pretty tough. Just regular biology, not zoology or botany, but regular biology was a really hard class. And a lot of that is dependent on the teacher. So try to pick the easiest teachers. Don't be like all proud and stuff and take the hardest teacher just because
No.
take the easiest, just take the easiest teacher. Trust me.
Okay.
Thank you for your answer. And one of the another question is, what is the most common cases or cases that you face as you are working as an ER doctor?
Well, most common cases are probably just your regular stuff where people can't get to see their primary doctor because, they're having issues. They call their primary doctor up and they go, hey, can I get an appointment? Because I have like a runny nose and a little fever. And they go, okay, our next available appointment is in 4 months. And so then they're like, I don't know if I'm going to have this problem in 4 months. And they go, well, just go to the ER. And so then they come to the ER. So we see a lot of, patients that maybe not a true emergency, but they can't see their primary doctor. So, some people stub their toe and they don't have a car. And so they call 911 and they come in because they stubbed their toe or they have a cold or they have diarrhea. And then obviously we see patients that really need to be there. They got gunshot to the chest or they have a heart attack or a stroke. So we definitely see real emergencies. But I would say the majority of patients are kind of your regular, cough, cold, asthma, vomiting, diarrhea, weak and dizzy. I would say a lot of those kind of like patients are in the emergency room.
Thank you for your answer. And one other question is, in Korea medicine system, hospital system, they don't like emergency patients because let's say people got injured from the accidents, but some people they don't have money to pay the hospital, but they had to go urgently and treat the patients. So the hospital is in charge of paying all those fees. So whenever they see cases, what I heard is that the hospital is losing money.
So they don't because the patients when they come into the ER in Korea, because it's like it doesn't seem like the patients are very like, what's it called, that it's not worth taking care of the patients in terms of the financial uh perspective, but
Yeah.
what about what's going on here in the States? Does that happen? Is
It
this
doesn't
the
really
question
happen.
people want to ask?
It's against the law. It's against the law for us to treat a patient based upon their ability to pay and their insurance. That's really that's against the law. So you can't do that. It's kind of like what we kind of call it a wallet biopsy. You know, you look at the wallet and you see what they can afford and pay, and you treat them accordingly. You don't. We're not allowed to do that. That's why America is probably one of the. I mean, there's a lot of countries that provide great. I mean, not that America provides great healthcare. I mean, that's pretty well known that we don't. But at the same time, it's like we're not allowed to do that. So you treat everybody equally, like a homeless person. I do, all the tests that I need to do on a homeless person, CAT scans, MRI, all the blood, everything on someone who's homeless versus someone who's, if it was my colleague, if my colleague's family member came into the ER, I would do the same tests as a homeless person. And so in the States, I would say there's not very much difference based on the ability to pay. So I definitely would not worry about that at all. I mean, it's not a concern.
Just need to have a better understanding about the medical system. Then who is paying for the homeless if the homeless is treated like having all the city and the hospitalization and all those things? Because Dr. Iguk Jong in Korea, he is suffering a lot at the emergency department because nobody wants to be an emergency department doctor, and the hospital doesn't like him because whenever he works, the hospital is losing money, and whenever they send helicopters and things like that. So there are a lot of negative, losses whenever they treat the patients. That's what the hospitals in Korea, they complain about.
It's not just the emergency room then. It's like, it's if a homeless person gets admitted to the hospital and needs surgery and they do surgery on that patient, all those specialists are not going to get paid, right? Those specialists will not get paid for that homeless person that came in. And so it's the same thing. It's not just the emergency department, but who pays for that? The taxpayers. The taxpayers are the people that pay for that patient, really, in the end. And so it's a burden that falls on the shoulders of all Americans. And that's why, that's why healthcare is so expensive here in the States, right? Healthcare is so expensive, is because of that fact, right? And also, litigation, right? You getting sued, the fear of getting sued causes the doctors to order more tests, more than they would need to do because they're afraid they're going to get sued. And so that also plays a factor in raising the healthcare costs.
That makes sense.
Yeah, Korea's healthcare system is, is definitely much different than the way we do it here. I remember taking when I was in Korea for I think our church went for a VBS to run a VBS there, and one of the students I had to take to the emergency room because he had this really bad sudden headache, and he was so sick that we took him to the emergency room, and we were talking, and they said, yeah, we think he needs to get a CAT scan, and they said, all right, you need to pay $700 right now. So I had to take my credit card and pay $700 before he could get the CAT scan, right? And so I don't know if that system is still in place right now, like that. But I remember distinctly he could not get the CAT scan until I had paid the $700, and that type of system absolutely does not exist in the States. We'd get in such big trouble if anything like that happened.
감사합니다.
Young kiddos, they have very interested in like healthcare systems in the States as well, right? Yeah. Nowadays in Korea, it's like chaotic these days. I think you know that, right? Because
Yeah.
all the, residency, they just, kind of. So yeah, it's pretty different from here to back in Korea. So for sure.
I have a couple of my cousins who are physicians in Korea. One is a urologist, and the other one pediatrician, orthopedic surgeon. And I've talked to them, from time to time about what it's like to practice in Korea and the demands and how many patients they have to see and all of that. So yeah, quite different. Just kind of the social media effects on your practice. One negative comment or a couple negative comments, and it really can cause quite a bit of damage to your practice. And so it's interesting, the practice of medicine in Korea compared to here. And if you get admitted there, your family has to take care of you. I mean, a lot of the care in the hospital when you're admitted, it's families that are there caring for them. It's very interesting. So
yeah, that's true. Dr. Park, because we are using the Zoom from the church, under the church, buzz. I don't know what's it called, but anyway, so we have kind of time limitations. So
Sure.
within the 5 minutes, we can just close up for today's session, and it's been recorded, Ellen, so you can listen to this, his amazing story, after this session for sure. So you just enjoy. Yeah, it's amazing. So one last, oh, there you go. Taeyong. Oh yeah, Dr. Nam.
Oh
he has a
yeah,
question.
hi. Hey, I'm actually the other jack of all trades specialty. I'm a family medicine resident.
nice.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, what in with your global health experience, what specialties do you think translates well into the mission field? I mean, I'm sure there's mission fields that would like a radiation oncologist, for example, but I mean that's what specialties do you think really translate well to different mission fields?
I mean, I think family probably one of the best, right? Just because you guys have such a wide range of training in terms of OB and everything else. I think in many ways, I think you are better qualified than I am in the mission field, to be honest. In terms of just like overall healthcare, because a lot of people are not coming there for like an ER problem. They're going for like more management of like some of their primary care problems, hypertension, diabetes, a lot of those things. And so I definitely think that, you're better qualified, but there are very few times where I feel like ER would be more qualified. I responded to the typhoon in the Philippines. I don't know if you guys remember that, but it was about 6 or 7 years ago, in Leyte, the island of Leyte. And we went 1 week after the typhoon, and maybe ER. Okay, there were times where I was definitely needed there. Laceration repairs, which of course you could do. But like that North Korea trip, ophthalmologists, they did cataract surgeries all week, and amazing, right? And we have another friend who is oral maxillofacial surgeon, and he goes to the Philippines with the Glendale Church, and he does amazing surgeries with the hospital over there. So I think, to be honest with you, I think really any specialty, I think you can find opportunities, and a niche, right? So.
Oh, hey, thanks so much. We appreciate you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You brought our perspective for this healthcare system, as well as like our career, future career. Is there anyone who wants to ask one last question, or can you just pray before we, finish our session? I want to ask tons of questions, but because of time wise, I cannot do that. I'm sorry about that though.
I can, I don't know who I would communicate. I can always send you my phone number and contact information if you have any questions or anything like that. Be
That
happy
sounds
to
great. That sounds great.
correspond in the future. Yeah, be happy to.
Very good. We have one last question from Yuna. Yuna, would you like to ask questions to Dr. Pak?
What was the most valuable experiment that you have during missionary, if any?
What was that again? Most vulnerable experience
You had while you're serving as a missionary.
in the mission field? Most vulnerable experience.
Valuable. Sorry, valuable, not vulnerable. Valuable.
Valuable.
Oh, valuable. That's a great question.
Or most memorable.
Yeah, no, I thank you for the question. Oh, okay, I know. So I went to, I don't know if I have time. I can tell you quickly. I went on a mission trip to Cambodia, and there was a girl that was a young girl. She was probably around 13, 14 years old. And we were singing songs, and she was at the literacy school in Phnom Penh. And she was, of anyone that I was looking at, this one girl was singing like so loud and so passionate. And she had the biggest smile on her face. And I was like, oh man, this girl is like amazing. And so then I came to meet her. And this girl, she was from Vietnam, and her family came from Vietnam to Cambodia in search of work because their family was like, had no work, and their children were going hungry. And when they came to Cambodia, life was not any better. And so her mother sold her for $300 to these gentlemen who ran a coffee shop. It's like a drinking establishment. And so she was working there. And as she was working, serving drinks to gentlemen that would come in, and she was like, I think she was like 13 years old. She didn't believe in God. She didn't believe in anybody, right? Or a higher power. But one day she looked up into the sky and she said, if there is a God out there, please save me, right? And just so happened that, I don't know how much time passed. There was somebody that came there who was, I think he was either somebody established in some religious affiliation or something like that. And he paid for her release. He paid $300, and he saved her. And he looked all over that city of Phnom Penh to if there was an orphanage or if there was a literacy school that could take her in. And he found this one that was established by a group called Amen. And that was the group that I went with this mission trip. And they had a literacy school. When I say literacy school, this is a school that taught them Khmer, which is the language of Cambodia, and taught them English. And in 5 months, this girl who had hardly any education learned how to read and write in her language, Vietnamese, in Khmer, which is Cambodian, and in English. 5 months it took. Because she was so starved of knowledge, right? And she just soaked it all in. And she got to learn how to read and write in all 3 languages. And that was that girl that was sitting there, and she was singing out, and she was like learning, and she was like, she learned about God, and she was at that school. And so get this. So she's like, I met her, and she had the biggest smile on her face. Later, I can send you a picture of her. So then I came back from this mission trip, right? And my wife went on the same mission trip. Maybe 2 years later, she went to Cambodia as a mission trip. She went to that same literacy school. Oh, no, she didn't go to the literacy. She went to like a camp meeting or something like that. And she met this girl there. And so guess what happened? Her mother came back to that literacy school, took her out of the literacy school, sold her again. All right? Sold her again. And I think it was the literacy school or somebody associated with that school was able to buy her freedom again and brought her back and saved her again. And what they did was they hired the mother as the cook for that school, right? So they employed the mother now to work for them and brought their whole family. And now her brother and her were going to that literacy school, and my wife was able to meet them after that. So amazing story. That was probably the most memorable thing that I experienced on these mission trips. And so, to be honest, when you go as a missionary or you go to the mission field or when you serve God, I think everybody will tell you you are blessed the most, right? You're not helping. I mean, God can do all that, right? God's got that, right? But God, in His mercy, and because He loves you, He allows you to experience these things, right? He allows you to be a part of what He is doing in this world, and He says, "Hey, here's this little, here's a little piece of candy for you, Ken. Let me help you experience this amazing thing," right? I mean, God helps us experience what He's doing, right? And that's really what it is to be a missionary. Is He lets you experience what He's doing in this world, right? We're really not doing anything, right? God's doing it, right? But He goes, "Hey, come along for the ride."
Yeah, God be praised. Wow, that's an amazing story. Wow. This is kind of finale, Wow, amazing story. Thank you so much for this story. Wow. Yeah, 아쉽지만 we need to call right now for time. Thank you so much, Dr. Pat, once again for your willingness to get involved in this, session, for mentoring session and inspiring all of us, spirituality. Yeah, can you have a closing prayer? And then
I'd love to. Yeah. Dear Lord, we thank you so much for this time. It's just awesome to be able to meet my brothers and sisters who, I can just tell that they love you and they want to serve you and they want to be faithful. And, sometimes we're just not sure how to do that. And sometimes we're sometimes perplexed by whether we're doing enough. And I just pray that you would give us peace. Help us just to have peace, to know that we just need to be connected to you and follow you and let you do the rest. And so, Lord, just help us to just continue to cling to you. Keep on doing what you're doing, Lord, and take us for the ride and help us to just really have fun, knowing that you are our God and that you love us, and that you want the best for us, and help us to be missionaries in whatever walk of life and wherever we're at in our stage of life, whether we're high school or junior high or whether we're out there practicing as providers. I just pray that you would continue to work in each and every one of us, Lord. We thank you so much for hearing and answering our prayers today. We pray this in your name. Amen.
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 네,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey.
Hi, Oppa.
Hi, good to see you.
Sister Rachel. I don't know if you remember me.
I totally remember you. You have not
remember me?
aged at all. You look so young.
Please say hello to 정미 언니.
I will.
Yeah, I have 4 kids.
Oh my, whoa, man. Wow.
Wonder Woman is here.
Good to see
All right.
And Dr. Pack, I was one of the middle school students at Hansam when you came back in 1999 or 2000.
Yeah.
And you spoke for a week of prayer. And I was I remember distinctly that I was really blessed.
Wow,
And here I am married with 2 boys.
Wow, that's crazy.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, no, happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful
Thank you.
stories.
Thank you. I'll see you around in God's providence.
Yes. All right.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ellie.
Thank you, Ellie.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Knopf.
Thank you.
All right.
See you. Thank you, Hejin.